If you can't read market structure, you are gambling. But after this video, you will never have to guess again. So what is structure? Structure is the foundation of every single strategy in the market. It's what's going to take an unprofitable system into a profitable system. And every trader that came before you has utilized structure in their own profitable system, which should tell you one of two things. One, structure is very important. And the second thing it'll tell you is that you're going to utilize it in your own system as well. So Brad, what is structure? Well, structure is a series of up moves on the chart strung together by candles that are moving in impulses and pauses in one direction. And when you have a consistent market that's moving in a certain direction for a long enough period of time, you have what's called a trend. And I'm going to tell you now, so write this down. The trend is your friend, and the trend is where you'll make the most amount of money if you are following structure correctly. Now, on the flip side of a trend, you have a sideways environment, and you will soon realize, if you haven't yet, and I'm going to assume you haven't because you're watching this video, if you're anything like me and you are caught trading the markets anywhere, and I mean anywhere and everywhere, this is going to give you the perspective and the knowledge you actually need to be able to start labeling structure and start getting involved on the wrong side, or sorry, the right side of the market, because I know, just like you, how daunting and heartbreaking and heart aching it can be when you're entering the market and you're taking losses after losses because you're wrong about the direction. Okay. So on the positive side is when you do the wrong thing over and over again, it tells you exactly what you're doing wrong if you're able to, dig a little bit deeper. And it's actually going to push you to start doing other things. And as soon as you do the right thing, which is what I'm going to show you in 2 seconds, you will be rewarded with a positive exchange, whether that's through positive emotions or positive feelings, that you're doing the right thing, and you'll be able to duplicate it for the rest of your trading career. Okay. So the market is going to move in 2 directions, primarily. The first one being bullish. So you have an upwards momentum through upwards impulses and upwards pauses, or bearish, where you have a staircase going downwards or downwards movement that's consistent, that's creating lower points one after the other after the other. Okay, perfect. So you know what structure is, but how do you identify it? I know bullish markets are increasing prices and bearish markets are decreasing prices, and those are only being formed by the structure that the market's actually creating. So how do I go about identifying these structure points? Okay, perfect. So in a bullish market, what you're going to have is consistent upwards movements. So it's going to start with an initial impulse that goes to create a higher high on the chart. So kind of what this looks like here is, if I start anywhere on the chart, let's start from maybe right here. This point is going to create an impulse and make a higher point on the chart. This is what's going to be called a higher low. And then the next point, the point it stops at, is going to be a higher high. This in itself is a bullish impulse or a bullish structure leg. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing, and one thing here that you should probably write down is markets neither go upwards or downwards for the rest of eternity. And at some point they come to pauses sooner sometimes rather than later. It's very rare. If not, you're never going to see a market just go straight up and straight down without any pauses. Okay. So what typically comes after the impulse is a pause in the market. Now, this pause is what we're going to identify as a higher low. And this higher low isn't going to come as low as the previous higher low, because we know if we are trading a bullish market, it is going to maintain consistent price action to the top side, ultimately putting in higher prices. So price stops and puts in this higher low. So puts in this higher low. And then from that higher low, what comes next? Well, a higher high. And we can see here that the market at this point in time, if we cut out kind of all this to the right, is moving upwards. So if I were to ask you one simple question, if you were to trade this market right now, which direction would you trade? And if you said anything other than long or the buy side, you're entering against the trend. And the trend is your friend because the trend is the consistent money showcasing right in front of you where the orders are coming in. So you want to be involved on the buy side if we know that they keep taking prices higher and higher through the previous points it once made. So from that higher high, it's going to do what? Well, it's going to create another higher low. And you'll see here that higher low does not come as low as the previous higher low, maintaining higher prices. Now you'll see here that this next higher high covers a little bit more distance than the previous higher high we labeled. So you'll see there's more distance between these two higher highs than the previous two higher highs. It's not by much, but it's different. And it's important for you to note that because in structure, in bullish impulses and pauses that maintain upwards movement, you never know how high price is going to go before it stops at that next higher high and creates that next higher low. And what comes next is the actual most perfect representation of that, because on price's next higher low, what does it do? It creates a higher high. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't mark this the higher high. I could have. Sooner or not in your trading journey, you'll realize that a lot of this is subjective and you are able to mark whatever you want as long as it follows a general principle that is consistent throughout your trading. Because as soon as you start being inconsistent in your trading, that's when everything's going to fall apart. So this would be the higher low. And then this next point would be the higher high. So once again, if you were to trade this market knowing that prices are increasing, the sell side pressure isn't large and the upside buying is much larger than the selling, where would you want to enter? And this goes back to the thought process that if you're watching this video, you probably have, or are just coming out of, that I knew I once had, is just the total ignorance of not knowing what direction the market is going or knowing where the market is going, but being so inconsiderate of it that you start doing opposite side set trend trading and ultimately losing money instead of sticking to the trend, right? So if I were to flip this whole thing, the next thing we're going to look at is a bearish market. So what's a bearish market compared to a bullish market? A bearish market is moving downwards. There's sell side pressure being consistent within the market, which is creating lower points in the market. Okay. So it's going to start with an impulse downwards. Okay. Now at the bottom of this impulse, we're going to call that a lower low. So when price pauses or takes a break on the downside, it'll do so by making a little upwards move, labeling this the lower high, right? So if we go back to this first example here, I'll delete all of this so we can kind of go through it one by one. You'll have the initial downside impulse, and this would be on the bearish side called a higher low. Lower low. Lower low. I'm going to write it out this time so you guys can get a better understanding, just so you see it, because your eyes need to go through X amount of repetition to be able to identify these structure points consistently. Okay. So from that lower low, you get an impulse. And right here, you have a lower high. If I were to delete these other text boxes, we will know exactly what comes next if we're in a bearish trend that is being created by bearish structure points, right? So here we have a lower low followed by a lower high followed by a lower low. And you'll see that I know we're using the same candlesticks or same part of gold here, just on the flip side. you'll see here that if I wanted to label this as the lower low instead of this right away, I could, right? The rules are going to be most important for yourself and only yourself. The biggest part is you just maintain consistency. Okay. So now you know exactly how to identify whether structure is going up or down. But if you don't take this video and start practicing labeling structure for yourself, then you're just trying to wing it and you still have no idea what you're doing unless you implement everything you just learned in this video for yourself on your own charts. The market, just to recap for you guys in 30 seconds, the market is made up of structure, and structure are orders. And these orders are shown by candlesticks, and these candlesticks are strung together in impulses in either an upwards direction or a downwards direction, and are met with pauses after such in order to put into the next move. And these moves in a certain direction for a long enough period of time, create a trend. And a trend is your best friend, because where you're going to have the highest probability to make money is when you exist in a trend and not a sideways, choppy environment where you don't know where or how to even start to label the structure points. So with all that being said, you will now know or have went from not being able to identify structure to being able to identify structure, but now you need to be able to do it for yourself. And the most important part of this whole trading journey for yourself is being able to put the concepts you learn into action on a repetition basis, right? Because you're going to be able to have to do the same thing 1,000 times in this market until you're actually comfortable and consistent and confident enough in your own trading. With all that being said, if you learned anything, got any value, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.